Joining us are Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. Gary, first of all, what do you make of what's been happening at quite a pace this evening?
Yeah, absolutely quite incredible. I think large concern yesterday morning, waking up thinking that, for me particularly as a United fan, that Joel Glazer had put his name on a statement, which you think about what they went through in sort of the takeover of Manchester United. They withstood a barrage of abuse. It didn't bother them. They went through it, and you just thought it's going to be difficult for them to back down. And they haven't backed down yet, but the fact that, well, City have obviously enacted the withdrawal procedure, and it looks like Chelsea are on the way. It's done. It's finished. And they'll have their PR teams, comms teams scrambling around now trying to make this look as lovely as possible in the next 24 hours, working out what the right time is to sort of withdraw from it. Whether, Perez might have them on £100 million fine. I hope so. I hope that Perez has got them on a massive fine to withdraw, the lot of them. And I hope they basically end up eating each other.
We'll come back to you on your thoughts about Ed Woodward in just a second as well. But, Jamie, what do you think has been the defining pressure in all of this that has caused the clubs to change their minds?
I just think the reaction today, I think, of everybody on the back of things that we saw yesterday ourselves on the show. I think Jurgen Klopp coming out last night. I think Leeds players. I think James Milner after the game as well. Patrick Bamford. And I said on the show last night, when we got into Sky yesterday afternoon, I was really fearful. We was in a meeting with Gary, obviously producers, Dave Jones and people from Sky coming in and out. It was really serious, and it felt like it had almost been lost, and there was no fight, really, sort of, not left in us, but, the ship had sailed, basically. And it wasn't until, I think, after the game, I think I said on the show, I felt re-energised, and I was really confident going to bed last night that this would be over. I really was. And it was on the fact of those players coming out. And I thought if we could get more players involved, more managers, but more importantly as well, supporters. And that really gave me a huge lift. And I've been convinced since this morning that this was going to be over. And I said last night, as soon as one goes, that is the end of it. And this is finished now. I don't care if they haven't all, threw the hand in. And I'm actually, I'm actually almost as angry with Liverpool right now as I was yesterday. The fact that they're still hanging in there and as if this is still going to happen. I mean, Jurgen Klopp has threw them under a bus. The own captain has threw them under a bus with the rest of the squad. And your dad has, thankfully, as well, Kelly. Kenny's come out as well and said something. I mean, there's nothing left for Liverpool's owners in what they're doing or what they're hanging on for. And I actually think the situation with Liverpool's owners now is, I don't see how they can continue. You can't just leave the club. Obviously, it's a business. It's worth a lot of money. They sell it. But I don't see a future for the ownership of FSG at Liverpool anymore. I really don't, on the back of this. And I think they're just making it worse for themselves the longer they hang in.
Jamie, you mentioned the tweet from the Liverpool players led by Jordan Henderson. And this is what it said. I can't read it. We don't like it. We don't want it to happen. This is our collective position. Our commitment to this football club and its supporters is absolute and unconditional. Graeme, the guys were talking there about the damage that has been done. Now, obviously, this could be framed as the clubs who will withdraw from this agreement or from this group will be seen as having come to their senses. But how deep does that damage go?
They've been dragged to their senses. It's been, when you think it's all... It was announced and it would appear to be falling apart all within 72 hours. And it just shows the strength of feeling to a man. Have you heard anyone supporting this? Have you heard anyone come out and say this is going to be a great thing for football or it's going to be a great thing for my club or I'm really looking forward to these games? It was just a mad idea drawn up by non-football people, I would assume. It was drawn up by accountants and people who were looking to maximise the profit out of football. Make no mistake, if this thing had happened, you look at the share price of Juventus on the Milan Stock Exchange, the share price of Man U on the New York Stock Exchange. I think it was 17 and 10% in both cases. So 17% for Juve, 10 for Man United. So, investors liked it. make no mistake, these clubs, they could have doubled in value. And I come back to, I think, for Man United and Liverpool, American owners, they would have been within 24 months looking for their exit. They got their exit. Been in it for a few years, been successful, done whatever they've done commercially, and whatever they've done on the field. And it would have been a great time for them to get out. They all have an exit strategy. And, you know, Man United's case, they're paying themselves enormous dividends every year. So, very nice. Thank you very much if you can get away with that, which they have done since the day they walked into the place. But they saw this as an opportunity to treble the value of their asset. And you can bet they were looking at the exit 24 months, 36 months from now.
Glen, it feels as though the first dominoes have started to fall in this, and the rest, it appears, are going to follow on pretty quickly. Yeah,
you'd like to think so. Hopefully that will be the case. As we touched on earlier, I don't think there'll be any clubs that come out of it unscathed. You know, there's a bit of mud on everyone's name. It's all about money at the end of the day. It wasn't about the fans, you know, the immediate club in terms of the staff and the players. So yeah, hopefully it's blown up in everyone's faces, and now the others can follow suit, hopefully tonight or tomorrow.
Gary, on Ed Woodward, we don't know that this has anything to do with the Super League, the fact that the club have announced that he'll be leaving at the end of 2021. But it has come on an evening where those plans seem to be crumbling. What are your thoughts?
We obviously don't know why the timing is now. The leeches could have thrown him under a bus. There's no doubt about that. Or it could have been that the sensible things happened, that Ed Woodward knew it was going to get pretty hot in the kitchen for him in the next few months, and he needed to get out of there. And the fact of the matter is, not just Ed Woodward, every single executive who goes and sits at the Premier League table, every single executive who's on these UEFA or FIFA committees, they need throwing out of that club, because there's no way they can turn up an audience again and be trusted. So Ed Woodward knew his time in football was finished, probably this morning, and he's probably done that to probably keep away from the criticism that would have come his way in the next few months. However, Ed Woodward is the trunk of the tree. We now need to go for the roots, because I said last night I felt complicit. They've declared their hand. While they were peacefully sat at the club, not making a statement, never showing their hands, never doing media conferences. Yeah, they were taking money out of the club. Yes, they've leveraged against the club. There's nothing that we could do about that once the club became a PLC. But I said last night, they attacked every single football fan in this country with what they did. And Jamie's just talked about FSG having no place in Liverpool. The Glazers have no place in Manchester anymore. And we have to work hard together to ensure that ownership rules in this country are changed, that we have a system whereby this cannot happen, whether that is government intervention, independent regulator, whether it be a fan-owned club rule, whatever it is, we have to make sure that this is the catalyst for change. And the people have spoken. We were on the brink of anarchy if this continued. The Chelsea fans that have turned up tonight, the Leeds and Liverpool fans who turned up last night, the social media presence, and these 6 sets of owners in this country, and obviously the other ones in Europe, have misread this situation badly. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We've been locked in for 8 months. We're not in a decent place here. And they've tried to run away with the crown jewels whilst we're all down. And they've basically made everybody rise. And I can't wait for the next season. I can't wait for fans to be back in the stadium, because there has to be a concerted, organised, mobilised, strategic effort to change now football in this country. I've been part of a small group, Kelly, for 12 months that have been working towards change behind the scenes around independent regulator to make sure that there is a fairer game. Still a brilliant Premier League, still players getting paid a lot of money, so we have the best players in the world and the best managers in the world. That we're not expensive of that, but that there is an element of fairness to what we do. And James Milner, last night, well done to you. Well done, Jurgen Klopp, for coming out and speaking out, because that takes real guts. Well done to Luke Shaw this afternoon, to Marcus Rashford, to Harry Maguire. Well done to those lads. Patrick Bamford at Leeds last night. Well done to the Leeds players for wearing T-shirts. All the fans up and down the country, enough is enough.
Jamie, in terms of the lasting damage of this, one of the repercussions has been that Liverpool's global time sponsor has said that it's going to leave the partnership with Liverpool on the back of it. Look, they have so many sponsorships, this club.
Is that Tribus, Kelly?
It's Tribus, yes, and they're going to.
I got a watch off them a few weeks ago, so I'm all right. that they've gone. I've got no big deal. I got my watch out of it.
You've timed it well then. But look, this is just in terms of the commercial aspect of this. If the club's reputation has been damaged, then it's not just Liverpool and it's not just this sponsor. It could affect sponsorship and commercial deals potentially.
Yes, listen, it could do, but I think the thing that will be at the forefront of the owners' minds will be the reaction from within the club. And I just mentioned everyone who's come out against them, who's really important at the club. I haven't even mentioned the supporters yet. Now, today, I was speaking to lots of Liverpool supporters with my connection with the club who were thinking of ideas about things to do to try and stop this. They didn't envisage this changing, within a few hours, basically. Me and Gary were speaking about things maybe we could help with in terms of the Liverpool-Manchester United game. That was maybe in 10 days' time. As I said, because this wasn't going away. I don't think we were leaving this until we won this fight. And when I say we, I don't mean, me and Gary on the show on Monday Night Football or Liverpool or Manchester United. I mean everybody in this country, football fan. And I can't remember a time when something has united everybody in football. I can't think of anything where so many people who've got huge rivalries, there's tribalism, traditions going back years where we're always against each other and we argue and fight with each other just because we're on opposite sides, even if we agree with each other. But this is something that has brought everybody together. And that's something I think we should all be really proud of and shows almost how important this situation was. Basically, this morning, it felt to me like this was 6 owners v the world, or certainly European football. That's what it felt. And as soon as I felt that, I thought there was no way back. And I'm just sort of delighted with every other sort of set of supporters who I'm normally at loggerheads with in terms of, United, Chelsea's reaction, Everton's statement today from their club. And obviously there's still a couple of clubs hanging on in there, and one of them being my own. That embarrasses me a little bit more. But in terms of the owners and sponsorship, I think the bigger worry for them is what's going on inside their own club and, the supporters' reaction. And as I said, I don't think... I actually said this yesterday in terms of Jurgen Klopp walked on the back of this. These owners will be out in a week. Obviously, Jurgen Klopp, I think, has come out and said this will not be happening. But I do not see how John Henry can sit in that wonderful main stand that he was a big part of building. I don't know how he sits there and goes watches a game. He doesn't come too often. Him or Tom Werner, his wife, Linda, I don't see how they can come to the club again on the back of this, because this will never be forgotten. And I think the best thing for them would be to find maybe a buyer. I'm not sure how easy that is, the situation that we're in, but I think it'll be very difficult for them to ever have any sort of relationship with the Liverpool supporters and the club going forward.
Gary, the Super League was clearly not the answer. Is the Swiss model Champions League the answer? Are UEFA now the goodies?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're the goodies by any stretch of the imagination. You think about the corruption in global football, European football for the last 20 years. There is a lot of trust to rebuild in UEFA and FIFA for us to ever think that they are what would be organisations that we can fully trust. I am concerned about the fact that it isn't, we're talking about sporting merit for the last 72 hours. The reason that this is kicked off completely is because it's not been, the competition that they were suggesting wasn't based on sporting merit. And UEFA and the Champions League have to ensure that they don't tip it over the edge towards a point whereby we are damaging teams, taking positions off teams, taking places away from teams. It has to always be fair. UEFA's big motto, FIFA's big motto is fair play. Fair play is on the pitch, fair play is off the pitch. I mean, what those clubs have done this weekend to the No Room for Racism weekend is an absolute scandal. I mentioned it last night. This was the big weekend where the No Room for Racism campaign was going to really be highlighted about the work that needs to be done. And these pariahs have done this weekend. And I have to say, ultimately, there's got to be big change, Kelly. We've got to make sure that the competition stays as fair as possible. that the distribution of wealth is as fair as possible. So we still maintain fantastic leagues and fantastic competitions, but we've got to make this the catalyst for change. This cannot be the end tonight, just because I never thought it suited City. I don't know what they were doing in Abu Dhabi. I have no idea what they were doing. I mean, they didn't need this at all.
Jamie, if the clubs withdraw from this group, and Manchester City have confirmed that they've started those procedures in order to do that, should they be exempt from punishment for trying to break away from the Champions League?
Are you saying because they pulled out early, they shouldn't be?
I'm asking
punished?
you if you think that. Do you think there should be repercussions for them, regardless of what happens from now on?
I mean, yes, I think so, but we should not also forget the fact that, listen, it's not the Premier League wants them. The other 14 clubs who have had a meeting today, they want these 6 English teams. I think these big teams, the Champions League want them. Now, people may say they should be hit with X, Y, Z, and I'm not saying that I'm against or massively for that. I'd probably like to see them get punished, and being totally honest. But the most important thing for me is getting everyone together, basically, and having... We need these top teams. Let's not forget, and let's not pretend that we don't. These are huge institutions within our game that have been going for 100 years. And as I said last night, this is not Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, City, Spurs, Arsenal. This is John Henry. This is the Glazers. This is Stan Kroenke. This is Roman Abramovich, Daniel Levy, and Sheikh Mansour. That's who it is. It's not the clubs. Should these players be punished? Should the managers be punished? They shouldn't be. It's the owners of these football clubs, not the football clubs, who are the big problem. And that's why I think I'm calling for hopefully change at my club. Gary's doing the same. I mean, it looks like Ed Woodward's moved on. I think the Juventus guy at the top, Agnelli, has moved on as well. And I think there'll be more. I think it really will. I think we'll really look back on this probably in weeks, months, maybe years' time, and almost realise the magnitude and the size of what we've all been involved in, really. Basically showing the power of the people to fight against people who are rich billionaires who own clubs, who think they can throw their weight around and do exactly what they want. And I think we've all proven, certainly in this country, I think in England, I think the media, I think the supporters and the players have been a lot more on the front foot than any other country in Europe. I'm convinced of that. And I think that's something that everybody, every football fan in this country should be really proud of today, the part they've played in taking a European Super League down.
Yeah, Juventus is saying that Andrea Agnelli hasn't resigned, but your point is the right one, which is that there are rumours about the futures of all of these people in positions of power. Do you think there should be repercussions, Graeme?
No, I don't think. Who are you punishing? So if you punish the club, you're really punishing the supporters. The players have done nothing wrong. The supporters have done nothing wrong. The people at the top will be punished by the supporters themselves. They can't go to the games anymore, or if they do, good luck. Certainly in Liverpool, I can talk with some authority there. I think it's impossible for those guys to turn up at Anfield ever again. Will they, run it from the other side of the Atlantic? Possibly, they may hang on to it, but I would imagine they're only custodians. All they are, they're just temporary owners in the rich history of the young lads here talking about it. They're 2 clubs. They're just custodians. They're a blip on the history of their club. There'll be owners after them that will be better. There'll be owners after them that might be worse. But this is a monumental time in our game that, if you stop any man who's interested in football in the street and ask them, they'll talk about money spoiling the game. And this was taking it to another level completely. They were what they were willing to do. What they were basically saying is, we're moving out of Europe. We're targeting an audience in Asia. As I said earlier, 750 million people live in Europe. We've maxed out on Europe, so we're now going to target 5 billion people in Asia. The television rights there will be enormous going forward, because that's an area that's becoming wealthier, more affluent with every decade. So that's where they saw the growth. There's going to be enormous profits to be made there. And that's all they were thinking of. They were not thinking of the man who, again, I said earlier, was sitting in his seat with a season ticket that his dad sat in and his granddad maybe have sat in it before. They're not interested in that. And we shouldn't be shocked. We shouldn't be surprised that we've encouraged owners from outside the British Isles to come to our game, invest in our game. They've not all been bad. You can't, if you're a Chelsea supporter, you can't say Abramovich has done a bad job there. You can't say that, the family that came into Man City have done a bad job there. Yeah, they've tainted their story with this episode. But I think it's a monumental time in our football, and the secrecy and the deceit that's been involved by these people goes beyond pale. And I think it's going to be very hard. I'll go back to these meetings that the Premier League have. How could you sit in the same room with any of these executives and believe a word that's coming out of their mouth from now on? I mean, they're saying that the contract is 177 pages long. Is that right? That contract wasn't formed in a month. They must have been talking about this for over a year. So they've been going to meetings, talking to their colleagues about the Premier League next year and maybe the following year, fully knowing they weren't going to be part of it. They were sitting there telling barefaced lies. How do you start again with someone like that? I personally couldn't. And I think we'll see sacrificial lambs right across these clubs going forward, where people lose their positions.